Welcome to the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best doubles strategies to improve your game and win more matches. I'm your host, Will Bocek. This podcast, my website, and my weekly newsletter all focus on the goal of better understanding the sport of doubles and helping players like you improve faster through actionable advice that you can use in your very next match. My goal is to provide the best doubles strategy resources in the world. And to do that, I study, analyze, and work with players at every level of the game, all the way up to the ATP and WTA tours. If you enjoy this podcast, I've created doubles strategy products that go even deeper if you want to take your doubles knowledge to the next level. At the end of this episode, I'll explain more about them, or if you want to learn more now, go to thetennistribe.com/products. Here's today's episode. You're about to hear my conversation with John Parsons from the No Ad, No Problem podcast. So John is a very passionate college tennis fan, and I listened to his podcast recently. I follow him on Twitter, and this is an episode where you're going to hear somebody who is an absolute expert at a very specific niche within tennis, and that is college tennis. So we do talk a good bit about doubles, but we talk about college tennis more broadly, and we preview the Sweet 16, which is coming up this weekend. I'm going to release this episode on Friday, May 9th, and there are a couple of Sweet 16 matchups a little bit later today. So you can listen to this episode to figure out kind of what to expect from the rest of the NCAA tournament. We talk about the college tennis landscape kind of as a whole and more broadly. We talk about TV and how we can get college tennis as well as pro doubles on TV a bit more. And he's going to preview a lot of the teams that are in this year's tournament as well. So again, I just really love talking with people who are so passionate about specific niches within tennis. And I think if we can get more people like John, whatever your specific passion is, to create podcasts and to tweet and to be on Instagram and all the social media and continue to kind of share your passion, I think it helps grow the sport overall. So props to John for doing this episode, for also hosting his own podcast, and for being so active on Twitter and other platforms as well to help grow the sport that we love. So without further delay, enjoy this conversation about college tennis with John Parsons. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have John on from No Ad, No Problem. John, welcome.
Thanks, Will. I'm excited to be here.
So at the beginning of the week, I didn't know we were going to do this podcast. I saw on Twitter you tweeted out about volleyball, actually. And I read your Twitter thread about basically what volleyball did right in terms of like a TV experience and what college tennis can learn from it. And I'm a big advocate of professional doubles. I love college tennis as well. And I'm always looking for like other sports to kind of figure out what we can take away and learn from them and apply to tennis in general. So talk about what you learned from that and then what kind of inspired that tweet.
Yeah, so I think for context, college tennis on TV has been a long-running struggle. It was probably one of the more prominent Olympic sports on TV in the mid-2000s. Up until like around 2010, we did have some of the individual finals on ESPNU at the time, but over the last few years, we haven't had the NCAA tennis team championships on an ESPN linear TV network since 2017. We've dabbled with Tennis Channel for some of the rounds, and this year it'll be on ESPN Plus, and then the finals will be airing on ESPNU, but tape delayed 10 days later. And so it's always been a big conversation of how do you get college tennis on TV? And one of the things that has both excited me, but also frustrated me as just a general college sports fan, has been the rise of so many other sports getting on linear TV networks. And so I saw that the beach volleyball championships was on ESPN, not ESPN2, not ESPNU, ESPN this past weekend. And that is a relatively very new NCAA sport. They just started the NCAA Team Championship in 2016. This is their third straight year on ESPN. And so that's what caught my eye for why I was so curious to see what that sport was doing to be able to get a slot on ESPN. So that's really what inspired the original tweet thread, what inspired me to sort of watch that broadcast and look for things that maybe college tennis could take to try and fit itself into a potential linear TV broadcast network spot.
And so I'm going through the tweet here. So you say for context, beach volleyball is similar to tennis. So they have 5 matches playing at a time. Um, and the first school to win 3 matches wins. So
Yep.
with tennis, it's like 7 lines. You'll have 6 matches at a time.
Yeah.
Um,
And that was super important to share because I don't think I necessarily knew that going into that broadcast.
I
And
didn't either. Yeah.
yeah, and then I was like, oh wow, this is actually way more similar to tennis than I even thought. Because one of the knocks against tennis that we've heard for getting on TV was it's challenging with the 6 simultaneous singles courts and the 3 simultaneous doubles courts. And, indoor volleyball, for example, that's just one court you have to focus on. Same thing with basketball or football. And finding out that beach volleyball has 5 simultaneous courts, of which they each have a dedicated camera, is actually way more similar to college tennis than I thought. And so that even piqued my interest more in terms of how they facilitated a broadcast that had to focus on 5 individual courts, where each court counted as a point, the same way it works in college tennis.
So if these so something just popped in my head. If these conversations are going on, let's say over the last like 10 years, and college tennis is going to ESPN and saying, hey, we want to be on ESPNU or ESPN2, and ESPN comes back with the excuse of, well, you have 6 matches at a time. This is just too difficult for us to manage. Look at NFL Red Zone. I mean, NFL Red Zone, there's like 10 NFL games at a time, and people tune in and they're jumping from game to game. They're going, to the touchdown here, field goal here, turnover here, and people love it. Like people watch that. So there's obvious, like that's to me that they're coming up with an excuse that isn't valid just because they have some other reason they don't want to deal with it. I mean, that seems wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were to put on my ESPN or other network
Yeah.
TV like production hat, I would say there's a handful of reasons why college tennis has struggled to get on TV. One is certainly this excuse or rationale around the 6 simultaneous courts, not quote TV friendly. That's certainly one. But I think other ones include the production cost to do those 6 individual courts, as well as the viewership numbers. So if you talk to some of the TV producers, either from Tennis Channel or ESPN, they will tell you that when they have aired college tennis, it doesn't do particularly well from a viewership perspective. And then the last one, which might be the biggest, is just the overall time commitment that they have to devote to airing a college tennis match and the uncertainty of that time. So this is not a timed sport like many others, or not a defined quarters and halves. You really don't know how long a college tennis match could take. It could be over in 2.5 hours. It could be over in 3.5 hours. So I'd say those are the general concerns that producers have when it comes to getting college tennis on TV.
Hmm. So what are some of the solutions that volleyball has seemed to figure out?
The one that I thought was really fantastic was, first off, these volleyball matches, at least for beach, don't take that long. Like they probably only take a little less than an hour. But so one thing they did for this broadcast was they staggered the start time of the 5 matches. So they have their lines, line 1 through 5. 2 and 4 started first, and then 1, 3, and 5 started 12 minutes after. 12 minutes might not seem like a lot, but in a match that might take 50 minutes to an hour, it gives you a decent spacing between those matches. So what it allowed the broadcast to do was to focus in on just those 2 courts to start, tell the stories of those matches, the player bios, things like that. And then as those like first sets were coming to an exciting culmination, you had the other matches beginning to start. And so once the first set's finished for 2 and 4, then they sort of went over the 1, 3, and 5, gave you the player bios, the history, and then they really locked in to where the action was closest for the remainder of the match. It allowed 2 and 4 to finish first. Now all of a sudden we're tied at 1-1. Now you're focused on fewer and fewer matches as the overall match goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like one kind of takeaway for me, and I'll link to the tweet in the show notes for people who want to check it out because you've got a lot of interesting observations, I guess. But one takeaway for me is like with college tennis, with professional doubles, something I've reiterated is like right now you don't have a whole lot to lose in terms of the TV experience. So they might as well like experiment with stuff and try stuff out and see what works, rather than lean towards like being resistant to change, I guess, and have a more conservative approach. Like just
Yeah.
try things out.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons my podcast is called No Ad, No Problem, because college tennis switched to no ad scoring in the mid 2010s. And when that was proposed, I was vehemently against it. I thought it would really cheapen or undermine the sport. It was a pretty controversial change at the time. Many folks who believe that the win by two scoring legacy that tennis has is really critical to like the foundation of the sport. And now in college tennis, we've going on 10 years of having no ad. I think it's a great fit for the sport. It increases tension. It speeds up match times. I love it. And so for me, it was a big learning of how we need to adapt more within tennis and be willing to try out new things. And just because you try something doesn't mean you're committed to doing it. And I think that like test and learn approach that many folks might have in their corporate job should definitely apply to professional tennis and college tennis when it comes to there's, as you say, nothing to lose if you say, hey, for this broadcast, we're going to say, yep, we're totally fine if you give us an hour window and we'll cut in for the last, hour of play. We'll start at the second set of singles, or there are lots of different format innovations you could try. You could stagger the start like volleyball did. But yeah, I mean, you might as well try because right now, when it comes to the totem pole of college athletics or doubles in the pro tennis tour, there's only one way to go, and that's up.
Yeah. So I want to move on in a second, but first I want to give you basically CEO power over college tennis for a minute. What, let's say like 3 to 5 changes would you make?
Well, I think in that spirit of test and learn, there's been a lot of discussion in the sport about a simultaneous format where you would have perhaps 3 singles playing and 2 doubles playing at the same time, or maybe it's 4 singles and 1 doubles. I would love for college tennis to experiment with that. So like this fall, I think now the fall is no team competition, it's only for singles and doubles. I think that's a great way to play some kind of what we call hidden duel matches where two teams might head off against each other, but it doesn't count towards your team ranking, and try some of that simultaneous experiment. I think that would speed up the sport, but also still have that kind of action everywhere happening, which would be interesting to see. And again, I don't know how that would work for TV, but seems to be something that TV execs are a little bit more interested in. So I would love to try that. That would be number one. For me, I would bring back the round of 16 matches to the final site. So I think that that's been a really exciting history of college tennis is when you have all 16 teams at the final site. Right now, we are only at 8. That's another one that I would do.
Explain to people how it works now, because a lot of listeners may not follow college tennis as closely.
Yeah, great question. So basically, for the NCAA team tournament, there are 64 teams, and they play the first 2 rounds at the respective top 16 seeded teams. So those are called your regional weekends, first 2 rounds of the event. If we're using pro tournaments, that'd be the round of 64, round of 32. And then the round of 16, also known as the Sweet 16 or the Super Regional in college tennis, that is played on a singular weekend. That's this upcoming weekend, May 9th and 10th, and that is played on the top 8 seeds campus. And so previously, this was when you would go to the final site where maybe that was in Athens, maybe it was in Orlando. And now, once you move on from the Sweet 16, the quarterfinals and onward are on that final site location. So
Hmm.
you have 3 weekends of tennis for this event, and also sort of like strings out the event a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. This is going to be controversial, but I would experiment with 10-point tiebreak in the third set. One, because I think that these matches are getting long, and
Yeah.
from a player perspective, I get it's not what we do on the Pro Tour, but if we're looking to get things on TV, we're looking to save player bodies. I think it's something we need to experiment with. So those would be three I would be looking to explore with. I will say, for listener context, one of the big questions that is looming over college tennis right now is whether or not college tennis allows for sports wagering on it. As we all know, sports wagering is huge in professional tennis at all levels. And there is a school of thought right now that thinks that bringing that to college tennis could bring a lot of additional revenue that just doesn't exist right now to these tennis programs. And so I am reserving judgment on that right now, but I think helpful
Yeah.
context that that's kind of one of the big looming questions over the sport.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because it's obviously like financially it would be a great decision, but I um am often seeing on social media and when I talk with pro players like the hate that they get for losing matches is
Brutal.
yeah, is really brutal. So to do that to like college kids, they have to create some kind of system around that to kind of support them, and try to minimize that as much as possible if they are going to allow it, I imagine. Um, yeah, I like the 10-point tiebreak idea. I'm actually somebody who is a bigger fan of the fast four sets instead. Because if you do say like 3 out of 5 sets to 4, you still need 12 games to win a match, and you're not playing a tiebreaker necessarily to decide it. You're still playing sets to 4. Um, it's something they do with the next gen finals, you know. And I think that's a cool format because you're still playing games out, and there's still the winner has to win the most sets, and you're not dependent on a 10-point tiebreaker, but it does shorten it from the full third set format. Um, okay, so next I want to talk. Tell us your story. How did you get into college tennis? I feel like with everybody, there's everybody in the tennis industry has like an interesting story, but college tennis is so niche. How did you get so passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, tennis was my sport growing up. It was the thing I gravitated towards. It was what I played most competitively as a junior, and was looking to play in college. And I did very briefly at the Division III level. I played for a brief season at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, whose women's program has certainly done fantastic since I've left. They've had several NCAA singles champions, which has been great to see. So I was always involved in tennis, huge tennis fan growing up, big professional tennis fan. It was my sport. And once I ended my playing career, I transferred to the University of Virginia, where at the time they had a fantastic men's and women's program. They still do to this day. And so not only did I have friends sort of my similar age, but also going to UVA and going to their matches, it just became something that was a part of what I loved. And I loved watching the sport. I loved following the storylines of players at that time, back when I was in college, like players I knew of during juniors, going to college, and then ultimately making that transition to the pros. So it was just something I was very passionate about. And after graduating college, I had first traveled to the NCAA tournament in 2010. I had gone in 2006 when it was here at Stanford, but then I traveled in 2010 for it. And that was at the University of Georgia. And I went there. I knew some players that were competing there. And I've gone to the NCAA tournament ever since, haven't missed one. And it's just been something that I've loved to follow. And I decided to sort of elevate the hobby or the interest to kind of have my own podcast back in 2022.
Awesome. So you'll be in Waco next week, I guess.
I will. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I may drive down. I live in Fort Worth. As you can see behind me, I've got my TCU background. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I'll let you
certainly if
know.
the TCU men make it, you should make the trip.
Yeah, I may drive down. I gotta look at the schedule and see. Um, yeah, so like I was listening to your podcast earlier this morning with Ethan. Y'all previewed the 16 on the men's side. I haven't listened to the women's side yet, but I'm gonna do that probably this afternoon or tomorrow. And I can hear like it just blows my mind how well y'all know each of these teams and all these players. I don't know if all that's like a lot of that's research versus like you just know from following it all or some combination of both, I'm sure. But it's amazing that y'all are going through like, oh, he's gonna win like line two for sure, but then this match is gonna come down to three and four, and y'all know every player's name. It's really impressive and kind of shines through the episode, the passion and the knowledge. So I just want to give you props for that.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate that.
what do you feel like since you've followed college tennis so long? I'm always curious, like, what does it take to build a program? And you can even use TCU as an example, since they're the hometown team here for me. Um, is it recruiting? Is it development? Some combination of all of this? What all does it take?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think TCU is a shining example of doing this. I think ultimately, in terms of the program, it comes down to a culture. And that culture is one that prioritizes the team over oneself, which is very hard to do because you bring in a bunch of juniors that are used to playing for themselves selfishly, and then they come to college and it's a team sport. And yes, you need to put a point up on the board on your respective court, but it's still a team sport. And so the programs I think you see have the most success are the ones that people would say have a very strong culture. And what I think that means is there is strong respect across the team and for the coaches, and they prioritize the team result over their individual result. It means being selfless in terms of where you might be playing in the lineup. Maybe you think you should be playing one, but you're listed at two, and being okay with that. It maybe means playing doubles with someone who you'd rather play doubles with someone else, but you have to trust in the coaches that that pairing is going to work. And so those are the programs that I think do really well. And the sign of good culture is being able to continue success of a program as new players filter in and out. And I think TCU is a great example of being able to do that using the home team here, who once they have gotten to this elevated position in the national zeitgeist, right, they've continued to be there even as new players have filtered in and out. And so I think that that is sort of first and foremost. That all starts with the coaching staff and the type of player profile you recruit. So those are sort of the underpinnings of that really strong culture. And then I would say this tertiary element of culture is the program and the community that is built up around that tennis program. And what TCU has done there has created a really strong community connection to the Fort Worth area. And it helps that the TCU facility has a ton of courts outside of just the six competition courts where they play their matches. It means that you have recreational players and fans who are using those courts who go there maybe daily to play tennis, but they do other events there, right? They make it a fun experience to go to a tennis match. I think that's one thing that tennis at the pro level as well can really take from other sports is when you can go to a tennis match and you can bring your family, you can bring your kids, and you can have a full outing of it, whether it's the food or the engagement activities, and you're not just having to sit there and be quiet and keep your kids quiet. And so I think TCU does a good job of that, allowing people to come and make a big event of it and have fun.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't think about the public facility kind of being a part of that because I play most of my tennis there. I was just there yesterday actually, um, uh, coaching a little bit on the public courts. And yeah, when you like walk into the facility, you look to your left and you see the varsity courts and it says TCU. You can see it over my shoulder here. Um, and then the indoor courts, like you can actually rent them and go play there. And it has their national championship banner and
Yep.
all this stuff. So it's even if you've like never been to a college tennis match, but you live in Fort Worth and you're playing tennis, like that's definitely going to make you more likely to maybe ask at the check-in desk, like, hey, when does TCU have a match? Oh, maybe I'll go to that, versus having
Exactly.
it more siloed. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's actually been a push that the USTA has tried to do is have colleges open up their facilities more to the public.
Mm,
And the selling point that they give to these schools is you're much more likely to convert those people that are using your courts to come to your matches than you would be if those courts just stay dormant while you're not using them. And it's for all the reasons that you mentioned, right? You're going to see the signage, you're going to maybe see a match time, you might run into a player or coach or someone who's affiliated with the program and strike up a conversation, build a little bit of a relationship. And so I think that is a huge element of building deeper connections with the community.
mm. So talk a little bit about recruiting and how that has changed, and also the transfer portal. I know a lot of college sports, obviously players can get paid. I'm not sure where it stands in tennis. So talk a little bit about that and how that's changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the huge ways in which recruiting has continued to evolve is just how much more international it's gotten over the last few decades. Tennis is the most international sport in Division One college sports, meaning that it has the most non-Americans on a roster. And I think that has continued to grow over the past decade and certainly the last few years as one, tennis itself is more of a global sport than some of the other sports that we focus on here in the US. And second, I think a lot of players are realizing that there is a really strong pathway and amenities and resources that you can leverage when you come to the United States and play college tennis that maybe your respective federation is not able to provide you as a junior player looking to make the transition to the pro tour. And so I think more global recruiting has certainly been a element of that. It's also meant on the flip side that you're not seeing as many top US juniors make immediate impact when they come to college tennis. It's a pretty short list of the top US juniors who come to college as a freshman and are immediately sort of a star in college tennis. I think that has been one huge transition. In terms of the transfer portal, now you see coaches having to balance. You bring in a potential 4-year player who is going to need time to develop and you're going to have to invest in them, or do you bring in more of a seasoned player from the transfer portal who has played college maybe for 1 year, maybe four, and is coming in as a grad transfer.
Mhm.
And that money aspect of it has now become a huge topic of conversation in recruiting. Previously, prior to the addition of NIL in 2021, schools all relatively at this kind of power four top 25 type school, they all had the same scholarships to offer. So on the men's side, you were allowed to have 4.5 scholarships. On the women's side, you're allowed to have 8. Pretty much against any other school you might be in a recruiting battle with, you were going to be able to offer a similar scholarship to that respective player. And your differentiation had to come from your facilities, your academic reputation, the coaching staff, the other players on the team. And now money is a massive element of what these schools can offer. And these packages look like not only a dollar amount, which can hover around 6 figures for the very top of college tennis right now. It also includes what you can do for me as a player on the pro front. So, for example, are you willing to allow me to travel to X number of pro events and sort of pay for my travel to do that during the season? Are there summer opportunities? Are there programs or training facilities that you have relationships with that I could go stay at during certain parts of the year? So it has massively evolved into more of a player first opportunity in terms of having these programs offer more benefits to them when it comes to recruiting.
Hmm. So is this like for these top players, basically, if I'm 17 years old, I'm being recruited by the top programs like TCU and Ohio State, Texas, and whoever. I can expect to have like an offer for somewhere around 6 figures per year. Is that what you're saying?
So
Or is it just like a year by year thing? How does this work? Like the details?
yeah, I mean, it's going to be a year by year thing. One,
Okay.
because people have a lot of mobility now with the transfer portal to go
Hmm.
elsewhere. And a lot of schools will do it differently. So some of the schools that you mentioned, I won't name names, but some of the schools you
Sure.
mentioned might offer sort of like a consistent package. So, hey, if you're on the team, you're getting an additional 20K a year for us, even if you're our number six or a number seven player. And then that's going to ratchet up as you are a top player. Maybe so what you're hearing right now is like if you're a top five player in college tennis right now, you're going to be able to get $100,000 plus or minus at some of these schools. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean they're all getting $100,000. Those players might be prioritizing other benefits or other things about their college career, but there are programs that are willing to spend that much money for a top recruit.
Hmm. Interesting. So, and this money comes from since it's through NIL, so it'll be like a local person who's just a big tennis fan, who's a big fan of the school. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is true across all of college athletics, but name, image, likeness, it's not like these deals are Wilson Tennis,
Yeah.
paying for an Instagram post from one of these players.
Hmm.
How it works is schools have respective collectives, which are essentially pooled resources from their largest donor bases. And those collectives then allocate money to sports and individual players accordingly. And so
Hmm.
where this money is coming from right now are those collectives. What we are waiting on right now is the final ruling for the House settlement, which would introduce revenue sharing, meaning that schools can actually pay these players directly, which does not exist today. Right now, we
Hmm.
only have the NIL through those collectives or through, could be a mom and pop shop or could be Wilson or things like that, but it's traditionally through those collectives.
Okay, I see. All right. We've gotten onto the NIL topic. I could talk about that a while because that does interest me, but I want to transition back to tennis. Uh, so we talked about college as a pro pathway. I want to talk about doubles specifically. So the current format in college tennis, you play three doubles lines. Each is a set to six. If you win two of those, you win the individual doubles point. And then you send out six singles matches, and each of those is worth 1 point. So doubles is worth 1/7 of the pie, I guess. Um, I don't know how. So I played Division three tennis as well. For us, doubles was worth three. So all three of those matches were worth one, and then it was best of nine back when I played. How has this changed over the years, and is there any talk to change the format even more for doubles?
So I think one of the reasons why Division One first went to the 7 point scoring system was that they started to whittle down the format for doubles. So it used to be 2 out of 3 sets, and then you'd go to singles. Then it went to a pro set, so first to eight, and then it went to a 6 game normal set. And so as the format became shortened,
When did these change? Sorry to interrupt. I'm just curious the timeline on this.
yeah, the
You know?
transition from pro set to like a 6 game set happened the same time that we moved to no ad, so around 2015.
Okay.
And then the transition from 2 out of 3 to 8 game pro set happened before the 2010. So that happened over 15
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
Um, and so that I think was one of the reasons for kind of they shortened the doubles format to try and shorten the overall match. And because doubles was not being played 2 out of 3, it was like, hey, this should maybe only count for one because you're really only winning like 2 sets essentially to win the doubles point in the same way that you would have to win for singles.
Mhm.
So that was sort of the history behind that. I think in terms of doubles format, it's probably going to be tough to like reduce the doubles format any more than it already is.
Yeah.
It's one set, it's no ad, like it's pretty quick. However, I think when you talk about the format of the overall dual match, there are potential implications that are being discussed to doubles. And I would say there are two formats that are most frequently discussed. One is one I mentioned around simultaneous, so where there might be singles matches and doubles matches being played at the same time. That wouldn't really change the format of doubles, but just it would be a different look. So you wouldn't have this like doubles first, a little bit of a break and then go to singles. You just have everything out at the same
Right.
time.
Well, you wouldn't
Uh,
be able to play both, right?
You wouldn't be able to play both
Yeah.
in one single match, right? You might be able to switch between matches, but
Hmm.
at the same time, you wouldn't be able to play both. And then the other format that I think is being discussed, which is probably not going to be highly favored on this show, would be where you start with singles and you would only play doubles in the event of a 3-3 tie. So doubles would sort of serve as the overtime version of college tennis. And so that has been also discussed, and it would definitely have an implication to doubles in terms of how many doubles matches you even played. Because the reality is over the course of a 25 match season, maybe teams have 5 to max 10, sort of 4-3 matches. And in that
Hmm.
format, doubles would only be played 10 of those 25 matches.
Hmm. I mean, I do like the idea of having doubles decide it, but yeah, I don't, that would reduce a significant amount, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's a cool concept in terms of the
Yeah.
overtime and have like this double shootout, right, to determine the match winner. It'd be very exciting.
Yeah. So before we get into the draws, I've got one last question, and this is kind of a personal preference question. I'm uh interested in like how this has changed over the years. So when I go to a lot of these matches, and some teams, it's almost always a match at TCU. I can't remember the last time I went to a college match elsewhere. I guess Texas. Because I used to live in Austin, but um, at these matches, it seems like every single match there's the tennis competition on the court, but there's also a yelling contest going on, and these teams are seeing who can yell the loudest. Has that always been the case with college tennis, or has it changed over the years? And what are your kind of thoughts on it overall? Because when I go to these matches, I'm like, man, this is just too much. Like they're screaming every single point.
Yeah, I mean, there's both the on-court screaming and then there's the off-court screaming
Yeah.
from like the bench players. I
Hmm.
would say that the it's probably increased on court, I would say, in terms of the enthusiasm and the cheering and like, I mean, in doubles, right? First point you win, like you're
Hmm.
given a massive come on. And one of the reasons for that is because of the momentum that you can carry between courts and you can feel like, hey, my teammate is doing well, I got to pick it up. It does really impact the flow and momentum for a particular team. I think where I've seen a big change is in the off-court cheering. I think over the years, it's gone from being much more controlled chaos, right? Where there may be like one or two sort of consistent chants that the team might be cheering, and maybe an OHIO from Ohio State. Now I feel like this new generation of players, like they're just more uncontrolled chaos. It's not as consistent, it's not as uniform. And I think that makes it feel as a fan like that there's a lot going on.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like if I coached a college tennis team, I feel like I would want to just flip it on its head and just be like, hey guys, everybody is trying to win this yelling contest, and we're just not going to play that game. Like, that's not to say you can't say come on, but I want you to like play within yourself because like as a player, I can't like I'm more even keel. Like I don't get amped up. So if a coach came to me like and I was on his team and they told me like you need to increase your energy, like that's just not my style. Like
Yeah.
so I feel
And I've heard
like
many stories where that does happen, right? Where they say
mhm,
it's not me, and some coaches are like, okay, you do you, like we'll
right,
continue, or they'll say like, well, that this is our program, right? This is like the expectation of the program,
yeah.
and so you have to find a program that's going to be willing to work with what will work for you. And it's not to say you're not going to be a good teammate, but you might need to just focus on being a good teammate by delivering points on the board rather than sort of always yelling and screaming.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like if you like get too amped up, you can maybe, I don't know, have a few loose shots or like give away a free point or something because you're like not focused enough and like level-headed enough. So I
Yeah,
don't
and
know. It
scoreboard
just
watching is a huge issue in college tennis, right? I feel like
hmm,
coaches would almost love to have no scoreboards out there such that you
uh
don't know what's happening on the court to your left, the court to your right, because otherwise you're sitting on your changeover and you're looking at all the scores, you're kind of counting in your head, am I going to be relied on? Do I need to keep trying? Or is it going to
Mm,
come down to me? And then, oh no, like that's not good. So that's one of the other
interesting.
things that is challenging in college tennis.
Is that what happened to Duke last week?
I think a lot of things happened to Duke last week and over the course of this season. But I think, yeah, when you know the match is going to come down to you, it's a very different mindset. And then if you think, hey, I'm out here and I'm just 1 point on the board, this is not as critical. It's a different mindset. And some players are really gonna thrive under that, knowing that like you have to win versus you can just go out there and do your best. And Duke last weekend in the second round against Tennessee was up 5-0 in that third set, and Tennessee reels off 7 straight games to send themselves to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that seems like an interesting challenge for coaches. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, what one approach would be like, I don't know if you can do that. I guess you could within your program. Like if you're the clinching match, you get some reward that following week. Like make a huge deal out of like being the clinching match. Like I know I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, but like Miami football had that like turnover chain or turnover
Mm,
belt or something, you know?
yeah.
So to have like some kind of piece of hardware where like this past weekend, like you won the clinching match, so you get the clinch chain or the clinch belt all week, and you get to
Yeah, I
like
love that
wear it
idea.
around campus or something like that. Just for that like that extra motivation. If a college coach is listening and steals that, let me know. I'd love to hear how it goes. All right, let's it's 10:42 here. Do you have time to go through these draws a little bit?
Yeah.
So, um, let's start with the women's draw. I've not listened to your episode on the women's draw, so I do not know what um, your predictions are, but start with Georgia and Cal.
Yeah, this is a rematch of the Sweet 16 we saw last season. Georgia, your number one team in the country, they won the national indoor championship this season and they made the NCAA final last year. So this is NCAA title or bust for them. I think they will comfortably get through this match, but it will help
Mhm.
Cal that they have been to Athens last season. Similar squad coming back, so they'll be less intimidated by playing in front of a rowdy Athens crowd. But generally, this should be smooth for Georgia. They have the number one player in the country, your NCAA singles champion, Dasha Vidmanova, who also won the NCAA doubles title last year as well with Icicle Mert. And they have the NCAA singles finalist as well, Anastasia Lopata, on this team. So very talented Georgia team that many folks are expecting to make it all the way this year.
Okay. Is Georgia, how many matches has Georgia lost this year?
They have lost twice. They
Twice.
lost to,
Okay.
and actually they happened back to back. Well, actually 3 times. So they lost in January to North Carolina, which feels like a lifetime ago. And then
Okay.
they lost back to back in the final regular season weekend to Texas and to Texas A&M.
Okay, got it. Um, Auburn and Duke.
Yeah, I think many people are expecting this to be the best match of the weekend. It is your 8-9 matchup. So by seeding, you would expect this to be quite close. Auburn has had quite the rise this season. They fired their coach last season. They bring in a new coach last May. They return only 3 players on the roster. He goes out, he recruits a ton of new players, some freshmen, a transfer, and they have now tied their overall match win record for that program. They're in the Sweet 16
Wow.
looking to make the quarterfinal for the very first time. So Auburn has certainly been one of the storylines that we've been following this season. They face a Duke team at in Durham, so at home, who has a much longer history of being very strong in tennis. The big storyline for Duke this season was they added in Liv Hovde, the former Wimbledon junior singles champion, to that roster. She became eligible in February. They won the ACC regular season undefeated, and so certainly they'll be making to make a deep postseason push.
Hmm. So this Auburn coach, this is their first year and they're basically breaking records in year one.
Yeah, he was the associate
Wow.
head coach at Texas A&M last season and a former Aggie
Uh,
himself, so helped that program win their first NCAA team title in 2024, and then took the Auburn head coaching job and has, yeah, as you mentioned, already started breaking records.
wow. Impressive. So then the bottom part of the draw, we've got North Carolina and NC State. I imagine this is a pretty big rivalry, huh?
Yeah, these two teams know each other quite well. This was actually your 2023 NCAA team final. North Carolina beat NC State in that match. So these two teams have faced off many times over the past few seasons, and it has been one of the better rivalries that we've had in college tennis in the 2020s. They've already played twice this season. North Carolina has won both of those matches. So they are led by Reese Brantmeyer at the top of that singles lineup, and I would say they have probably the strongest doubles point in the country right now with Brantmeyer, and then they also have Carson Tangillig, who won the NCAA doubles title in 2023. So if you're a doubles fan, this should be an excellent match. NC State traditionally always has a strong doubles point. They play very traditional doubles. They follow their rules. They'll serve tea almost all the time. Like they have their patterns that they go to. And so doubles point here will be very, very fun to watch.
Hmm. Okay. And that you can watch that on ESPN Plus, you said?
So this weekend will be on the Cracked Rackets YouTube stream. I
Okay,
think
got it.
all of these matches, but maybe two of them.
Okay. All right, I'll link to that. It looks like that match is Friday at 4 Central Time, so 5 Eastern. Okay, so LSU and Ohio State. So my uncle played tennis at LSU, and I grew up a big LSU fan. So, do my Tigers have a chance?
They definitely have a chance. This is the first time LSU
Okay.
has made the Sweet 16 in 25 years. So this is another program that has been a storyline to monitor, largely because they brought in three freshmen in January, headlined by Cadence Brace and Kayla Cross, two Canadian players who have reached top 300 of WTA singles rankings, who have contributed here to that lineup. And then they also have a freshman in Tilworth D. Girolamo at number three. That has basically been their path all season to win the doubles point and then win at one, two, and three. And
Hmm.
they have found ways to do it. It's going to be tough against this Ohio State team who had a pretty quiet season up until they won the Big Ten tournament title, upsetting number three Michigan, which vaulted them all the way to being a number four seed here. So this will be a very fun match in Columbus.
Next up, we've got Michigan and Texas, so just a little bit down the road for me.
Well, it's going to be played in Ann Arbor, so a little farther
Hmm.
from you.
Oh yeah.
Uh, this is a fun one. Michigan, your number three seed. Texas, the 14 seeded team here. Texas was one of these programs we were very curious about coming into the season. Potentially, was going to have Maya Joint, who did was in Austin for the fall
Hmm.
semester, decided to turn pro. It's a very, very young Texas team. They start four freshmen in that lineup, sometimes five, versus a much more calloused Michigan team at the top of the lineup. However, Texas did get an upset over number one Georgia in the final weekend of the regular season. So the talent is certainly there for this Texas team to pull off the upset. But Michigan, this team made the quarterfinals last year and will be looking to make second straight quarterfinals.
Hmm. I would think like a team with mostly freshmen has maybe a bit more upside, and like towards the end of the season, they might be more dangerous than they would be early in the season. Is that fair to say?
I think that's definitely fair to say. The only flip side to that is sometimes that it's a long season. They might be a little bit more burned out than maybe a
Hmm.
more callous veteran player who kind of knows how to manage the course of the regular season.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good point. Is this Texas lowest seed in a while? It seems like they're always like one, two, three.
Yeah, I mean, they won back-to-back NCAA titles in 2021 and 2022,
Right.
but over the last few years, they've slipped a little bit, I would say, but that
Okay.
was more like an 8, 9 type seed. So
Okay.
14 probably is the lowest they've been in a little bit.
Okay. And then, so we've got two unseeded teams, Stanford and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, first time we've had two unseeded teams here in this super regional format since it started in 2019. But At the same time, two teams that have been towards the top of college tennis over the last decade. This is a rematch of your 2016 NCAA team final, where Stanford won that match that was played in Tulsa. This match will be played in Stillwater. I expect Oklahoma State to have a very strong crowd. It's quite the turn of events for Oklahoma State. They were the number one team last season. They were undefeated coming into this round, the super regional round of NCAAs. They lost at home, heartbreaking loss because they were going to host the NCAA's final site, so they weren't able to compete there. So I expect they're going to have a lot to play for in this match against the Cardinal.
Then moving to the bottom part of the draw again, Virginia and Tennessee. So it's a 7-10 matchup.
Yeah, I expect this match to be quite close. We saw these two teams play at the indoor national tournament in February. Virginia did win that match. Tennessee was sort of the breakout star of the NCAA tournament last year. They made the Final Four for the first time in about 2 decades. They're led by Allison Ojeda, who won the ITA Coach of the Year award last season. So both well-coached teams, both compete very hard. We've seen them scrap out a ton of victories. I expect this one to go the distance to Charlottesville.
And then the very last one here, A&M and UCLA, who's unseeded. A&M's the 2 seed, and they won last year, right?
Yep, you're defending NCAA champion here, beating Georgia in the final last year. I expect Texas A&M to get through this match. UCLA upset Vanderbilt to make this match. Now, had we had gotten Vanderbilt versus Texas A&M, that would have been interesting because Texas A&M has only lost to two schools this season. One is Georgia, and then the second was Vanderbilt. So they avoid the rematch with Vanderbilt, and they get a UCLA team who is strong in doubles. They have a former top five team in the country in Kimmy Hance and Elise Wagley, and then your NCAA finalists, two freshmen, Kate Faki and Olivia Center there in that lineup. So if UCLA is going to have a chance in this match, it starts with the doubles point.
Which of these do you feel like is most likely for us to see an upset?
Well, I would say probably Texas, Michigan, just because by seed it would be a pretty big upset. And also
Mm.
because we've seen that level from Texas towards the latter stages of this season, upsetting number one Georgia. So we've seen evidence that they can pull off an upset like this. So I would say that one.
Okay. And who's your prediction for the finals in Waco next week, and who wins?
I think the past few seasons have been dominated by Georgia and Texas A&M from a storyline perspective. I think we will see a repeat of Georgia Texas A&M in the final, and I think we
Mhm.
will see a reverse of last season's NCAA final this year. We will see Georgia Bulldogs winning their first NCAA title since 2000.
The top seed. So, okay, let's move on to the men's side. We don't have to go through every matchup. We're coming up on an hour here. I would encourage people, and I'll link in the show notes to listen to your full episode on your podcast because you really do a good job of breaking it down. I do want to talk first, though, about the TCU UCF matchup. Tell us why we should be optimistic as TCU fans.
Well, maybe I would say cautiously optimistic, but we did see TCU lose to UCF in the Big 12 semifinal, a shock loss for TCU, who was without a lot of players in that match. Notably, Pedro Vivez, who is your NCAA doubles champion with Louis Maxted, has been out for all of April. We did see him in doubles this past weekend, so if you're a TCU fan, you're cautiously optimistic that you will see Vivez in singles. I think I would not want to play a TCU team that feels a little bit scorned by that Big 12 loss. So that's another reason to be optimistic here. And also, if you look at last season when TCU won the NCAA title, this round was really the round that I felt like they started to put their pedal on the metal and played a flawless match last season against Duke. And so at that point, they were working in new pieces as well. Gorsny was back into the lineup there. So it's not unfamiliar territory for TCU. And also, if you want to be optimistic, show up to this match, give the TCU Horned Frogs a heavy home court advantage.
Yeah, I think the weather's supposed to be good Saturday. I'm planning on going. And I think there's a baseball game after I might attend as well. But yeah, it should be fun. I imagine like it's just like in basketball or any other sport, like to beat a good team twice is so difficult. And the fact that they just played a couple weeks ago, um, and UCF won, like I feel like that's a good thing probably for TCU, more so than a bad thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you'll hear a lot of coaches talk about, a tournament loss maybe ending up being the best thing a team could have rather than running through a season feeling like you're unbeatable.
Sure,
You maybe don't have that extra motivation in practice.
sure. So among all of these matchups, where do you see potential for an upset or two?
Well, I think the Sweet 16 match that most people are circling is maybe the most exciting or potential upset is number 7 Virginia playing number 10 Arizona. Arizona coming to town. Colton Smith leads the Arizona Wildcats. He has had a fantastic pro season, sprinkling in pro results in the fall and in the spring here. He's won matches at Indian Wells. He's up into the top 150 in the ATP singles rankings. He will be playing Rafa Hadar of Virginia, who won the US Open boys singles title in 2024. So that is a popcorn number one singles match for sure. And Arizona has now made three straight Sweet 16s, but they have yet to make a quarterfinal. So that is, I think, one of the most interesting Sweet 16 matches. I also think people have Ohio State, your number 5 seed versus Mississippi State on upset alert. We just saw Ohio State lose in the Big Ten tournament title. It was the first loss to a Big Ten team in Columbus since 2003. So they
Wow.
are on upset alert as well.
Wow. Yeah, so I watched Colton Smith a bit at Indian Wells this year, and you said so he's top 150. Like that's what one thing I want listeners to kind of take away from this episode is, if you have a college team, especially like a high level program in your town, you can basically go watch pro tennis for free. Like
Yeah.
at TCU, most of the matches are free. Sometimes I think for some of the tournaments it's like $5 or something, but um, and they've got, Jake Fernley's already top 100 and he graduated like a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we saw him from Stillwater, and then 6 weeks later, he's playing Djokovic center court Wimbledon.
yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable. So just the level is so high, and the doubles is a lot of fun too, just because it starts with that. Usually, if I can't stay for the full 3 or 4 hours, like I'll go to the doubles and then maybe the first set of singles or so, and then run because I always love watching the doubles. So when we look at the men's side, what are your predictions for the finals and who takes home the trophy in Waco?
Wake Forest on the men's side has dominated this season. They were undefeated until getting upset by Virginia in the ACC semifinal. I think they are one, they are your number one seed, and two, I think they are the favorite. I do have them taking home the title here, their second NCAA title, first since 2018. I think that's in large part due to the other top tier contenders here not exactly looking their best down the home stretch. So TCU, a little banged up, Texas banged up, Virginia has been a little volatile, Ohio State on upset alert. Like it really is Wake Forest to lose here. It's not to say they are for sure going to win it. And then I would have Texas in the final there. I think Texas is going to get
Hmm,
through that other half of the draw.
interesting. So do you see a TCU Texas semifinal matchup then?
I see a TCU Virginia quarterfinal matchup, and
Oh,
yeah, I think it really depends on health for TCU.
hmm,
Like if TCU doesn't have Pedro Vivez healthy and in that lineup, I'm not sure that they can keep it going against
yeah.
some of these top eight level teams. If they do have them healthy, then I would see them facing Texas in the semifinal.
Okay, got it. Awesome. Last question for you, John. How can we make pro doubles and college tennis more popular?
Uh, well, I mean, I think if you're not, the first step is to get your butt in seat or to turn on the TV. Because
Hmm.
if you are a fan of these sports, but you are not tuning in or kind of tuning in with your foot traffic, like it starts there. So if you do have a college program nearby, like showing up to matches is really the number one thing you can do. And engaging with those schools, both in person and online, is massive for the program. I think for doubles, I think it comes down on the pro side, it comes down to storylines and stars. And I think elevating your stars in doubles to be more traditional stars and mixing in more pro singles players as well is a huge benefit. I think at rising tides lift all boats. I would like to see maybe I've seen some ideas where at Grand Slams, maybe the doubles doesn't start until like midway through the first week, allowing for some singles players to maybe enter in. I think that would be fun. I think ways that we make doubles more engaging, like I'd love to see more mic'd up conversations as well between doubles players. I think as a recreational fan, you want to know what they're saying to each other. That's a different dynamic that doubles has that singles does not. That's something that could be really fun. So yeah, I think those are some ideas. I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of both, clearly.
Yeah, love those ideas. Yeah, at the US Open this year, they're going to be starting the doubles a little bit later, so hopefully that helps as well. But yeah, for everyone listening, definitely go out, watch your college tennis and watch your doubles. John, thanks for coming on. We'll link to everything in the show notes for everyone listening. Yeah, we appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I love talking to people who are passionate about a niche within tennis, and it really shows when you listen to your episodes. So
I
keep up the
appreciate
good
that.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
watch more doubles, watch more college tennis.
All right, awesome. Thanks, everyone, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Doubles Only podcast. If you're interested in diving deeper into any topics I discuss, I've created doubles strategy products that allow me to bring you more podcasts and other doubles content without relying on paid ads. I have ebooks and courses that help you make better strategic decisions during matches and become the smartest player on the court. Go to thetennistribe.com/products to learn more. You can also join my free weekly double strategy newsletter that includes video lessons and more on our homepage. If you want to connect, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or email me directly, will@thetennistribe.com.